Would you say it's normal to be a believer and still be depressed? Do you think sometimes people have this idea, hey, you're a worship leader and you should have it all together, so you're not allowed to be depressed?
Oh gosh, yeah. Like, I think that's like my major motivation for wanting to speak about this. As nervous as I am, I just feel like, I'll just be honest, I feel like the church isn't talking enough about these things.
What's going on, everybody? We are back with our weekly vlog.
Hey guys!
So today we are going to be talking about something kind of serious. It's a little bit more serious, but we figured, you know what? We're all about transparency, and we can't tell people to be transparent with us if we're not willing to be transparent with you guys. Today we're going to be talking about some stuff that we've both kind of dealt with together in different ways. I've walked with her through this, and I know she's really nervous, but I think there's a lot of breakthrough when we're able to talk about things that we've gone through.
In sharing, we build community, and in sharing, that's where healing takes place. Hopefully in sharing what I'm going to share today, please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to know that you're not alone, you're never alone, and that we all got this together.
So for a few years, and I'm only saying this because I know it's a little bit hard for her, but it's something that she's been wanting to share. So I figured, like, it's going to be very interview style. I'm going to ask her some things and she's going to share. So for a few years, she's been dealing with a depression. Do you want to tell us a little bit of where your depression stemmed from?
I think in probably the last year, I gave my symptoms a name. Before, I always just thought I was just like really temperamental, or maybe I was like, maybe something's wrong with me. Or with depression and like the symptoms of it. When I say symptoms, I mean sometimes just how quickly my mood can change, how quickly I let someone's perception of me get to me, because I'm so focused on doing things right the first time, on doing things like being the best at what we do, and then on top of that, kind of just internalizing everything that I feel I fall short on, all the things that I'm not, all the things that I can't do, and like that's kind of what emphasizes the symptoms, kind of like, you know, feeling isolated. I don't really want to see people, I don't really want to talk to people sometimes, or it's very difficult for me to kind of connect because I'm afraid of letting people in. Those feelings of isolation kind of, you know, get bigger if I let too much time pass by, because then it gets too easy for me to be like, oh, I'm good, I'll stay in tonight, or oh, I'm good, I don't really want to do it, or I don't really want to talk, because then that means I have to get deep with someone.
So some of you guys might be watching and saying, hey, I'm either depressed or I'm walking with someone who is depressed and is in kind of in a dark space. Some symptoms that I noticed in my sister was just excessive sleeping. She would just be really tired all the time, or is sometimes just very exhausted. The quickness and just anxiousness to want to get out of a social situation where sometimes people will be talking and I can tell she's uncomfortable. Sometimes it is in the moods, sometimes it's in the demeanor. As someone who's walking through that path with someone, I really encourage you to intercede and ask. I have a very sensitive spirit, so sometimes even when she says, I'm fine, I have to ask, because I'm going to break through that with her. And I'm not going to leave her alone until whatever is holding her, whatever, sometimes you can definitely feel when it's there. And some people might call it vibe, or be like, oh, you know what, your energy was off, but it's when you're talking about it in a spiritual way, you can definitely sometimes feel a heaviness, and it's definitely the enemy. And so what I try to do, even if she does get irritated, because that's another symptom, is irritability, I make sure to tell her, A, you're not in this alone, and B, we're not gonna skip out on this moment until it's gone. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be healed right away, because the enemy has a great way. The enemy doesn't take timeouts. The enemy makes sure to keep hitting you where it's gonna hurt. But I know that as someone who's walking through that season with her, I make sure that even if she gets irritated, I'm like, you're not in this alone. We're gonna pray, we're gonna intercede, and we're gonna keep going until we combat this together.
I feel like there's a bit of a taboo for people that are like, you know what, I live this life of faith and I'm still like sad, and I still feel empty, and I still feel lonely, and I'm here to tell you that that's gonna happen. You're not less of, you're not disqualified for feeling that. I do believe there's a taboo on it.
Yeah.
I do believe that that's a huge issue that we have, especially in a generation that's, you know, quote unquote, the most connected with social media and Facebook and FaceTime and, you know, all these apps stay connected, and yet we have the highest suicide rates, and we have the highest percentage of young teens taking medication for depression and anxiety and, you know, like attention, you know, helping medicines that help you kind of focus, because you know, we're so scatterbrained and we're, you know, we're just lacking. I feel like, you know, our generation, even though we have everything that's accessible to us, I feel like we're still lacking and we're still empty. When you're in a place of faith and you're in a place where you're trying to discover your calling, the enemy's going to jump in, I think, more fervently.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in a lot of our friends, a lot of people that are kind of being bold and living out what they're called to do. You'd be surprised how many of them deal with depression and anxiety.
I think the thing about anxiety too is that it takes so many different faces.
Oh yeah.
Anxiety doesn't just mean like being jittery, or depression doesn't mean being like super depressed and like emo, and no. Anxiety is the umbrella to so many other things, and it manifests itself in mood swings, temper, patience, all these things where you can definitely tell how someone is feeling by the way they react to certain things. I would ask a question and it's almost shut down, or and it wasn't anything she was intentionally doing. It was stemming from other places that she was hurt from. When you're walking through life with someone like this, you have to remember to have grace. And it's not easy. There are days where I don't know what to do anymore. There are days where I'm like, how can I help you? What can I do? And she genuinely doesn't know. There's days where she's like, I don't know. I don't even know how to fix myself, and I'm calling on the Lord, and I feel like I don't know what else to do.
Right.
I think that's all part of the process. And I think what the enemy loves to do is make you feel extremely low. So the more you call on the Lord and things aren't happening right away when you need them to happen, that doesn't mean that God isn't letting you experience that to take you out of it eventually to be able to talk about it. Just because the enemy is sending something your way doesn't necessarily mean that you have to claim that as your own. That's not yours to claim. What's happening is that there's this huge disconnect between people who know someone's depressed and know someone's going through it and are afraid to get involved. It's okay to get involved. And it's okay to be bold and say, you know what, you're not in this alone. You think you're interrupting someone's privacy, but there are people who want you to interrupt their privacy.
That literally could not be more true.
There are people who are so hurt and so guarded that are just waiting for someone to ask. And as much as they're like, no, I'm okay, they're not okay. And the fact that you're asking is helping them deal with it and is making them realize that someone does care. Our faith is also built up of community. And it's our job as believers to intercede together. We're not meant to do life alone. And so I encourage you guys today that if you know of someone who's going through depression or anxiety, or you're the one going through depression or anxiety, you just speak about it. Talk about it. It's like a wound. The more you kind of press things out, the quicker you begin to heal.
And I think that's like one of the moments that kind of like turned for me. Like there was a point in time where I was sitting in my room, and I just remember just thinking about how did I get here? Like how did I get to this place where I just feel like I'm surrounded by people, but I would feel so alone, and I would just feel so in my head. Like the more she asked me sometimes, the more I'd be like, you would never understand. You would never get what I'm thinking. Or maybe what I'm thinking is, it just sounds crazy because people are gonna, like, what are people gonna think when I say what I'm really thinking? How dark my thoughts are, or how alone I feel, or how angry I am sometimes. And it was just like, it was a very like isolating like place to be mentally. There was one night I called, actually I didn't even call her. My sister called a friend of ours who is a worship leader and the wife of an incredible worship leader as well. And she just kind of took it upon herself, my sister, to kind of be like, look, this is where Genessis is at, and we need to speak out on some stuff. And I remember she just told me to be open, to begin to be open, and to begin to trust the process of letting God into those dark places. And it's a lot easier said than done. It's really easy to be like, oh God, help me, and to be on your knees and to pray and to refer to scripture, but a lot of times it's the human connection that kind of makes the word real. It's the human connection that makes Jesus real, because then you remember that Jesus was sent down to be a man, and Jesus went through pain and suffering and temptation, and all of a sudden the human connection is what makes, like, just as much as the pain is real, the hope becomes real. And you begin to see a light at the end of the tunnel. So after this conversation, I remember that night after that conversation, I spoke to my mom, I spoke to my grandparents, I spoke to my sister, and I kind of just was honest about what I was going through. And even though I couldn't necessarily put a name on it, I told them, I was like, look, these are the things that I'm feeling. And these are the feelings and the thoughts that I think sometimes. And I know that something's off, and I don't know why necessarily, but I need help. Just that initial step alone, and recognizing that there was something wrong, that something wasn't normal, like that already is a huge step. If you're watching this and you know that something's off, and maybe you don't want to put a title on it, and you don't have to put a title on it, but if you know you're at some days you feel really lonely, or you feel really sad, or you feel really depressed or angry or anxious, or you feel like you don't meet up to someone's expectation, like that's okay. Breakthrough comes when you're able to kind of face it, and you're able to tell someone you trust about it. Hey, you know what? These are the things that I'm feeling. And even if there is no immediate plan of action, the fact that you unload that burden on someone else that you trust, that's strong, that knows you, and that hopefully is connected to God in some way, where you guys can deal with something together. Your chances already are so much better of finding hope. I think that's what I'm most grateful for in this process, is that I've never, even though the enemy would have me feel like I'm alone, in being honest and sharing, God comes in the situation. You invite God into a situation, and then all of a sudden it doesn't seem so dire, because I don't have to carry this on by myself anymore. And I think that's what the point of all of this is to know that there are going to be really dark, bleak days, and there are going to be days that you don't understand, and that you might remember things about your past that all of a sudden make you feel shame or guilt, or they make you feel alone. And I'm telling you now that it's normal sometimes to go through those days. What's not normal is to stay in that place. That's what the enemy wants. And the truth is that you're too important. You have too much going through you. Someone in the world needs what you have to say. And I encourage you to speak out, and I encourage you to create a community, friends, family, even your spouse, or whatever situation you're in. I would encourage you to reach out. If there's anything that you relate to in this video, and and you want to comment, please reach out. We're all in this together. We're all in this together, and all Nick and I want is for you guys to maximize the calling on your life, because the enemy will do anything to shut you up, because the story you have to tell is going to break somebody else's chains. We hope that, I know I'm like shaking, you can find hope, that you can find light, that you can experience God and peace and joy and love. And
do it together with someone.
Do it together.
And as someone was walking through this with her, I mean, I've had my days. I went through a really tough depression growing up, but I have learned so much from this process with her. There are days where I don't understand, and it teaches me really patience and grace. And we're just completely different in the sense where she can be going through something, and I'm just naturally very lighthearted. And you know what? You kind of have to be like that. You kind of have to cry it out and then laugh it out after, because we serve a God of joy, of peace, of happiness. And so if you're choosing to stay in this place, even as someone who's walking through it, like, don't be a Debbie Downer every second, like, hey, are you okay? Like, they're not sick. They're not broken. If you're gonna be walking through something with someone like this, your job as a listener and as the one walking is to be in those dark spaces, but also make sure to be the first to be like, all right, we're done. We're not going to speak this or claim this anymore. Pack it up. Let's go.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you so much. If you guys like what you guys saw, or you guys want to see more things like this, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Let us know what you guys are thinking. We'd love to hear from you guys, and we totally want to stay connected to y'all.
And connect with us on our social media handles as well. Genessis and Nikki at Instagram, and Henny at Facebook as well. So it's all going to be the same, Genessis and Nikki on Facebook and on Instagram, and our personal handles are Nikki Neen and Henny Hen. However you want to connect, or maybe you connect with her a little bit more, or with me, or you just want to reach out on Instagram, on Facebook, Genessis and Nikki. We love you, and we hope that you are walking by faith and doing it with people behind you that you trust and that love you.
We love you guys.
We love you guys. We can't wait to make another one of these videos. Bye guys.
Bye guys.